Up until that, I didn't have a lot to do in the World Cup. We had played Egypt, we had played against England, and we had, of course, got through the qualifying group stage. And then we're in against Romania. And it was a very warm day, I remember that. The lads were up against a decent team. Romania had Hadji in the team, who always played on the periphery of things, and he was the danger man for them. The rest of them all worked hard, but as soon as they gave the ball to him, he was the guy that could make things happen. And he had about 3 or 4 pot shots at me from outside the box and so on, and I had a couple of good saves from him. So I was on a bit of a high, and then of course it went to extra time. 2 teams were pretty tired at that stage, and it was only really, I suppose, then that I thought that this might go to penalties. Incredible atmosphere. Predominantly Irish, of course, playing against Romania, and you had, it was almost closed in. The corners was almost like how can I call it, a block of flats in every corner, and that's how it looked to me. Obviously it was corporate facilities and so on. So the tension, the atmosphere and everything was trapped inside the stadium. And of course the Irish fans, we know what they're like. They travel the world, and they love those occasions. They sing the songs, especially when it was 0-0, we didn't go behind. So they sensed something was about to happen also. When I went over to Ireland, I spoke with Jerry Payton, who is the backup goalkeeper. And Jerry was more than a backup goalkeeper, he was like a coach. He had all this experience. And we sat down and we discussed it, and we came up with a bit of a plan. And a plan that was going to help me when it came to this situation. And it was almost about the player running up to the ball. He put the ball down, he stepped back. What angle did he go back at? If he went back fairly straight, then I knew that he was going to either blast the ball or side-footed. If he went in an acute angle, my theory was that he was going to play it into the same side that he was standing on. And if you look at the penalties and look at it, that's exactly what happened. I had a plan, and I was lucky because I went the right way for every penalty before that. I got my hand to, I think, the penalty just before Daniel Timoftes. So I felt I'm going to save something here. Get the same scenario, and he came up. He didn't look confident. That was the first thing I noticed. He looked very unconfident. Remember, he came on as a sub also for Romania, and he put the ball down and he stepped back and he went to an incredible acute angle. And there was only one place this was going, and I had the other wee trick in me that I used to go, if I was going to my right, I would go to my left and then go to my right, and that's exactly what happened. And it was all about timing. It was all about keeping your eye on the ball. I kind of knew where he was putting it, get the timing right, and that's what I did. I went left to exaggerate where I wanted him to put it, and he put it. It wasn't a brilliant penalty from him. It was a nice height for me. It wasn't great pace in it. It was almost into the post. But once you see it, and then the great thing about penalties is that you don't have to catch it. You don't have to knock it away to safety. You just keep it out of the net. Dead simple. I had saved it, and then I look up the pitch and I see Dave walking down, and I says, Dave O'Leary. Wow, Dave O'Leary never had a penalty in his life. And the other crazy thing about it, I only realised recently that Ray Houghton told me that was the first penalty he ever took in his life. You would expect Ray to have many a penalty, but absolutely so we had 2 players who took the first penalty ever and a shootout in that particular competition. Ray being one, Dave being the other. It wasn't the case that changed my life also, it changed everybody's life over in Ireland. The motion was quite incredible unless you lived over there. And there was nobody on the streets, everybody was in the bar. This was going on for about 4 or 5 weeks, and suddenly then now we're into the quarterfinals of a World Cup, and people will tell me still to this day where they were, who they were, what was going on, how many pints they had. I can remember that bit, and it was magnificent. It was magic. And then suddenly, because I was part of that whole scenario, you know, there were people coming to the house in Donegal, people from all over Europe was coming weeks, months after. My mum making tea for them, me over in Glasgow, but she was brilliant with them. And just wherever you went, people wanted to talk to you about it. Of course, you know, it was just a life changer. I can't explain it, but he had this something that just connected with people. I went into many houses afterwards, you know, older people, you know, you go in and say hello to them when you went home and so on. And every single one of them wanted to talk about Jack. Everybody wanted to say, oh, I love Jack, I love Jack. I never met Jack in their lives. But whatever he had came across to them, that he was warm, that he felt, he was passionate, he made the game simple. But he was able to connect with us as a group of players also and make us into a team, almost into a club type team. And he fitted in with the Irish psychic very much. That he wore a hat, he wore a coat, he wore the same coat for 10 years, same suit. But he mixed, he smoked, he went for a pint of Guinness, he went into the local bar, down the country, went fishing. All those things sort of made a connection with the Irish people. And they loved Jack for that. The players, when we had success under him, magnificent. And you know, all people ask me what was he like in the dressing room. He treated us with respect. You know, he would tell us 1, 2, 3 key things. He was tactically very aware, even though the game was very simple and it was crude in the eyes of many of the people that loved their football and said we should play this. And maybe that is a criticism, that we could have played a bit better football. But we got the results. And the way that we played, I think, also was simple, and it actually made a connection with the Gaelic people, the people who came from that background, from the rugby people. If you think about the Irish psychic, it's let's get at them, let's 100%, and within that, if you get results, fantastic. The game's more sophisticated now, more tactical now. In our day, probably it wasn't, and it suited us. And if you look at the group of players, we had huge men. McCarthy, big man. Kevin Moore played the guy for Dublin, played in All-Ireland, won in All-Ireland. Niall Quinn, big man. Paul McGrath, big man. Myself, big person. Roy Keane, in stature, big man. Frank Staples and John Aldridge, magnificent. Those were an incredible group of players to be around, and Jack just blended them all together, and he made us all feel equal also. For me, it was about responsibility. He gave me so much responsibility to go and organise things in that team, and I just grew and grew as a person.